through audio or in the chat. Well, welcome again. We're trying to make this a fourth Friday Zoom class that we offer at the Idea Foundry for anybody who's interested in learning what our culture is like, how to use tools, how to design for those tools, hear about upcoming events and fun and mischief. So today we will largely be discussing how to use a free design software program called Inkscape with the specific task of creating a laser cuttable box. And we have a little example right here. I still have a lit tea light in here, so I'm holding it gently, as part of a Halloween themed class project, which we're hosting next Thursday, September 28th. So if people are interested in attending that, this class is very helpful in learning how to design files, what kinds of things you can cut, text, images, the size of the box, the materials, things like that. So hopefully people will have confidence that they can go from a rough idea in their head to holding a laser cut little plywood box that shines light, and there's no mystery at any step along the way. So what I'm going to do is start sharing my screen here. And actually what I'm going to do is share my presentation. So let me share the proper screen. Boom, boom, boom. So, like I mentioned, this is one of our recorded and Zoomed classes at the Idea Foundry, hopefully providing some access to people who don't normally make their way down to Franklinton, down to the Idea Foundry. Today, a very simple outline will be going over a website called MakerCase. There are a number of design applications that you can just use through your browser. It's not even an application, it's just a website you go to, which is specifically designed to create a two-dimensional laser cut pattern to create a three-dimensional box. And again, it'll be a box kind of like this. So we'll show how to make that digitally for free using MakerCase. There are a few other free websites that do the same thing. Pick your favorite. Then we're going to use a free design software called Inkscape. We like Inkscape because it's free and open source, which means the entire design community can contribute new ideas to it. Think of it as a legally free version of something like Adobe Illustrator. Then we're also going to talk about how you can take a legally free image you can download from Google, or if you have sketched your own pencil and paper image, how you scan that or how you take a digital photo of that and then convert it into the file format, the so-called vector that we can cut with a laser. The reason this is helpful is not everyone is terribly artistic. So sometimes it's a little bit tricky to use vector software, even if it's free, and even if there are YouTube videos that teach you how to do it, it can be hard to create a traced image that you like. So there are ways to use what's already out there in a quick and convenient way. We'll talk very briefly about Lightburn. Lightburn is the software. Once we create our image, our vector file, throw it on a flash drive, and then take it down to the laser at the Idea Foundry and load it in another piece of software called Lightburn. It's just one step you need to go from your design to cutting. Then we'll talk briefly about our laser cutter. And then I hope most people are familiar with hot glue and what tea lights are. And we'll wrap up by showing what it actually looks like to take the parts you've laser cut and then actually assemble it into a component. So we'll go through a few more of these. These are brief screenshots of the things we're going to talk about. This is what MakerCase looks like, but I'm going to then go to the MakerCase website and actually go from 0 to downloaded vector plans. And this is what they will look like. And MakerCase is kind enough that once they export the plans, they also show you which piece is the back, the front, right, left, top, and bottom. And then we're not going to go over all this here, but there is a very specific set of, we'll call it a recipe, or just a few instructions, which if you just have next to you while you're using Inkscape, will make sure that you know how to take an image that you can get from Google, or which you can draw yourself, or even a photograph you take of your dog, of your children, of your house, and then trace that into a vector we can laser cut. And this is a screenshot of what Inkscape will look like when we import our images and trace them, or if we create text. And then this is what that plan will look like when we take this, combine our images with Inkscape with the image or the plan that MakerCrate exports for us. And again, we'll do this in as hands-on a way as you can do digitally and virtually. So I'm going to go to, I think the first step will be MakerCrate. And let's go here. So I hope people can see my screen here. We'll see a little nod. Thank you, John. So again, just to say, go to MakerCrate, click on that. By the way, I'm using a Windows PC laptop, and I'm using Chrome, but this should work in any browser. And here it shows you some example boxes you can create. We won't go into all of these. All we'd like to do today is create a simple box that's open-topped, in which we can engrave images and then put a tea light or an LED light in there so that it will either illuminate, back illuminate the cutouts we put in the side of the box, or if the LED is bright enough, we'll actually cast shadows onto the wall or wherever you are. So I'm going to click this simple box. And now here we see we can choose our units. And I'm going to pick 4 inches by 4 inches by 4 inches. But just to show you that it renders it pretty quickly, dynamically, you can make a host of different things. If you wanted to make a box to hold chess pieces, if you wanted to make a pencil case, imagine what you will. So we're doing 4 by 4 by 4, and it's clever enough to ask us, are these the outside or the inside dimensions? This is not a terribly dimensional precise project, so I don't really care. We'll keep it on the default outside. This part here is important. It's asking for material thickness. And sometimes when you buy plywood at the hardware store, like we did a week ago, it might say it's 1/8 inch, it might say it's 1/4 inch, but really, and I'll show a photo of this later, the sticker on here says the material is actually 5.2 millimeters thick. And this makes a big difference when you're actually doing these finger joints, these finger grooves. So you can click custom thickness, and 5.8 millimeters divided by 25.4 millimeters per inch is 0.2 inches. So I'm going to put that in. If, for example, there weren't the actual dimensions or thickness on the sticker, you could take calipers or a ruler and measure it yourself. And then it's asking, do we want the box to be open or closed? When we did this trial a few days ago, I didn't check the open box, so it left us, I'll show you a little bit. You have almost what I'll call castle turret tops, because we didn't tell it to make it open. I'm going to click open here, and now you can see that this is open. And this is fun. So the edge joints, if you're talented enough to hold this together, either with masking tape or rubber band, or you have a friend who can hold the pieces together while you glue it, you can do it without any kind of joints. The thing that's great about these design softwares, we can pick finger joint, and then we can choose what size it is, either for function or for aesthetics. I think just a couple of these finger joints to mate the sides works well. So what's nice is you just click on this slider knob, go back and forth, and pick whatever works for you. So I'll pick that pretty arbitrarily. And that's it. Now we're going to click download box plans. And here it's giving us a preview. So the red outline will be where the laser will cut. And this is teaching us, okay, this will be the back, the front, right, left, bottom. because we picked open box, there's no top. And I'm going to download, I'm going to leave all of these default features here. I'm going to download SVG. This is Scalable Vector Graphic. That's what Inkscape uses. That's Lightburn reads it well. So I'm going to click that, download it. And just to show you what it looks like, it has labeled it box 1. And on my screen, it's very hard to see. There's a very faint red outline of those box patterns. You'll see this more clearly in Inkscape when we load that up. But now what I'm going to do is I had earlier today gone to Inkscape, and I like their tagline is draw freely. Again, it's free and open source. Went here, I clicked download now. And I had downloaded the Windows installer package and installed it. It took 5 minutes to install. Now it's a new app on my computer. What I'm doing is went to File and New. I will say, because it is free and open source, it's a little less responsive than other commercial packages. Just be a little patient with it. So what I'm going to do now is go to File. And actually, I think I have 2 windows here. I'm closing the old one, maximizing this one. And it has a default template size. I'm going to say File, and I'm going to go to Import. And I'm going to browse to the folder, in this case, it's Downloads, where the box Scalable Vector Graphic, SVG, was that we exported from MakerCrate. Click on that, click Open. I'm going to accept the default preferences. It's saying, do you want it to be the same dots per inch as the file that you just made? Yes, yes, yes. So I'll hit OK. It'll take a second. And now if you use the scroll wheel on the mouse, that will zoom in. But I'm going to use the plus and minus just so you see when I'm zooming in and out. And let's see, zoom down here. I'm right-clicking on it, and I'm saying ungroup. And we'll see some goofiness happens. When we ungroup it, it suddenly turned every little line and drawing in that originally one uniform image into lots of these different little vectors. And it may have arbitrarily assigned some thicknesses to these. So you can see the font is now goofy fat, hard to read, but we can see those red outlined laser cut files. What I'm going to do now, and when we save this video as a link that you can watch, we'll also have a list of the recipes that I'm about to talk through. So you can go to click on Object. So what I've done here, you can see that if I use my mouse and I left click on either of these boundaries, so I try to get my mouse as close to the red line and left click, it highlights that part. If I were to click on these goofy fat jumbles of letters, you'll see that it highlights that object as well. So what I'm going to do now is click on the outer pattern here. I'm going to go to Object, and I'm going to choose the Fill and Stroke menu. And up will pop a little window. Again, we'll be a little patient with it. I'm going to close the object properties. Okay, just to show you, if you don't have it, Object, Fill and Stroke. So now up comes this window. Fill is just what it sounds like. So if we choose solid, then it fills that entire object. If we're on the Fill tab here for this property, for this object, and I hit X, that means don't fill it. So you can see that it's emptied it now. Stroke is the word they use for the actual line around the perimeter, around the edge. And here, if I were to hit X, there's no stroke. So now this object is really invisible. It has no fill color, and it has no periphery trace color. If we make it solid, we see it again. And stroke style here, we can change the thickness. So I'm going to change it to 1 millimeter, just arbitrarily. it looks more like a thin line that I'd like to cut on the laser. And now what I can do is I can do the same for all the others. So I'm going to click this one. If I hold Shift and left click with my mouse on another outline, it adds it to all of those. And I think I've collected all those. Now, if I hit 1 millimeter and hit enter, it changes that for all the ones we've selected. Now, this will be more obvious when we change the font size. So I've clicked on this font, this word, this word, this one, and this one, all while holding the Shift button down. So it's added them all together. Now, if I go in here and change it to 1 millimeter, now we can see what it's trying to tell us. Now, we probably don't want to actually laser cut or engrave the words back, right, front, left, bottom on our box. So what we might do is either screen capture this, or I'm pretty lazy, I'll take a cell phone picture, and I'm holding my phone up here, of the screen, so that when we cut our part, and I'm going to delete all these words now, I'm just going to left click on it and press the delete key on my keyboard. When we actually have laser cut our parts, and I'm looking at 5 or 6 parts, and I might have put them all in my hand and shuffle them like cards, I can go back. Well, don't do that. When I see them on the platform, I can either write with a little pencil which one is which, or I can mentally remember. So if I were to save this as a scalable vector graphic.svg and put it on my flash drive, I could take this down to the laser cutter and cut it, and I'll get these different pieces that I can then glue together into a little box like this. But what I haven't done is added any kind of custom imagery, whether it's a word like the word boof or Halloween or raven. So what we're going to go over now is, if you have an idea how to create it yourself, or how to, like the phrase, good artists borrow, great artists steal. If there's a legally free thing you're interested in, borrow that and customize that. So what we're going to show you how to do now is how to customize these. We'll go first to Google Images, and let's say I want a raven. So I type the word raven in Google. I'm going to go to Images, and there are a few pro tips here. If you see Tools, and this is not something people often click on for Google Images, a new menu bar comes up with a few other options. I'm going to click Usage Rights and say Creative Commons. So generally usable for things like what we're doing today. And then I can click Type. I can explore line drawing. Maybe someone has already created a great vector file shape that I can just download. These look a little bit rough. This might be interesting, but it doesn't look like a raven. These look a little more artistic for my purposes. You can also check, click on Clip Art. Clip art tends to be pretty black and white, literally here, and easy to trace. So I like this little raven here. So what I'm doing is I've clicked on it. Now I'm using my right mouse button, save image, and it's going to go down. I'm going to call it Raven Test. And I'm going to go back into Inkscape now, and I'm going to say File, Import. We don't want to create a new file. We want to import something into this existing file. And here's that Raven Test. And it's asking us for some preferences about how we want to import the image. I'm just going to use the default preferences, assume Inkscape is smarter than I, and click OK. And here we have the image. If we're on the arrow cursor button here, then I can left click, hold the button down, and I can move it around. Now, what this is we'll call it a bitmap. That's like a JPEG or a GIF. It's not a traceable shape. It's just a black and white image, a collection of pixels. So if we want to cut this out, then we need to trace the edge of it. And thankfully there is, and if you're curious, Google the difference between bitmap and vector. If you zoom in on a bitmap, you'll see lots of little dots of pixels. If you zoom in on a vector, you just see the periphery, which is what we want. So I'm going to show you that you just click on this image, then go to Path, the Path menu in Inkscape, and go to Trace Bitmap. So we're going to trace this image here. Again, a bunch of menu options and preferences will come up. I'm going to assume that the default preferences are okay, and I'm going to say okay. And here, it has shown us a preview of what the trace bitmap looks like. Now, I've been using the word trace, so you would think it's just the periphery, it's just the outside or the edge. But because a vector can have both the outside line and it can be filled, it's showing us both the outside line that's traced and the fill. What's also a little funny in Inkscape, and this is one of the reasons we like to show videos, not just a Word doc about step-by-step. If I click OK, you'd think I'm done, and you'd think the window would go away. It doesn't. We are done. To make this window go away, hit X, and it looks like nothing happened, but really what it did is it traced that object exactly over the object that we imported, over that image. So again, I'm going to click off this just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to click this image. I'm going to hold the left mouse button down, and I'm going to move it, and we're going to see that the original image that we traced is still here. And we know this is a bitmap because it has the whole white outline too. So, and we know this is the vector because you can see the edges underneath it. It's just the size of the raven, the shape that we had. What I'm going to do now is click on the bitmap on the original image we imported. We don't need this anymore, and I'm clicking delete. Now, I'd like this bird, this raven, to be centered approximately in the middle of what might be the front of my box. And if we remember, vectors have both a fill and a stroke. So what I've done is I've clicked here, and if we look back at our menu here, our window for fill and stroke, we see some options. If you had lost this window, but need to change the parameters of this object, just click on the object, go to Object, choose Fill and Stroke, and we can see fill and stroke style are here. If I go to fill, it's saying that it's currently filling with a flat color. If I hit this X, it's going to fill it with nothing. Now it's disappeared because the stroke style, it's hard to see on my shared screen, but right now this X is highlighted. If I choose flat color, now we can see it's traced that outline. Well, it's just showing the outline in a color. And because it's a shape, I can change the size, I can stretch it, I can do all this fun stuff. I can also, if I want, click on it, and then I'm going to hit Control C, or you can go to Edit, Copy. Whoops, what did I hit? Click on it, Edit, Copy, click off of it, and then Edit, Paste, and it makes another one that I could then put elsewhere. So right now, one raven's enough. I'm going to delete that. So that's a very quick and dirty way where if you have an image, you can then import that into Inkscape, use the trace feature, take the fill out, and add a color to the stroke, and now you have a vector that we can cut. Now, the other thing that we're going to show is how to add text. So Inkscape has this text feature here, and I've clicked on that. And now I'm simply going to left click. I'm holding the left mouse button down and stretching just to define my space where I'm going to type. And I'm just going to say boo. Now this looks a little small, so I'm going to double click on it just like any word editor. And I'm going to change the size. Let's go to 56. It will also treat it like an image, so I can also grab these corners and stretch it out. Now, one thing to note, if we cut this out, the center piece of these O's will also be cut out. And let me see if I have an old example. Okay, right here. Well, let me turn off my sharing. So I'll hold this against my my shirt. you can see that the center of those two loops in the B and the center of each O fell out when they were cut. So this isn't quite what we want. So we would need to add a little stencil, a little tab to hold the center parts of the O and the centers of the B inside. That's a little complicated. An easy workaround, one of the Idea Foundry members suggested, there are fonts that are already stencilized. So what I had done is gone to, typed in stencilized fonts, and you can type in free. And I had gone and clicked on one. I liked the font that I took. And you can download it. It'll save it to your downloads. In Windows, the way you add a font is simply to drag it into your fonts folder. And I did that earlier today. And I'm going to share my screen again. So if I double click on this, I can choose my font here. And I think it was called Old Stencil. Okay, there's oldie with an E on the end, Old Stencil. And now it's changed the size so that it's exceeded the boundary of the laser cut edge that I'd like. So I'm going to grab this and shrink it a bit. And if I zoom in, you can see that this is a stencilized font. There are no holes on the insides of these letters that will fall out. Now, what I'm going to do is, again, click on this, take the fill off, go to stroke, add a flat color fill, and I'm going to go to stroke style and change it to just 1 millimeter. And that looks fine. So what I'm going to do now is File, Save As, and I'm going to call this Example Vector, and save it as a .svg. Again, it's that scalable vector graphic. Say save. And what I would do now is put it on my flash drive, go to the Idea Foundry laser, go to the computer next to it, plug it in, and open it in Lightburn. Rather than walking downstairs and doing that, what we've done is created a little video, and I have a few photos that I'll show. So I'm going to share my screen once we have a few of these pictures. And by the way, I know we've had a few people join us most recently. If there are any questions, please feel free to pipe up while I'm looking here.
Yep, we've got a question in comment, and I had a question. In Inkscape, it looks like the default workspace was set to portrait, but we were working mostly in landscape. Does that matter?
That's a great question. And no, it doesn't. And I'll prove that by opening the file we created. And I'll show that as a scalable vector graphic, it'll just open it to the outer boundary of what we've done. And Lightburn will open it that way as well.
Great, thank you for that. David had a question. In terms of workflow, any preference or pros or cons of working directly in Lightburn versus Inkscape and then coming into Lightburn?
Yeah, I see that question. Thank you, David. And Jeff, who's on our chat as well, is our asset manager at the Idea Foundry. He maintains the laser, makes sure things are operating and safe. He's mentioned Lightburn is a great software program. I think it's about $150, maybe a one-time cost, which is very affordable for a great design software program, especially one that interfaces with the laser, but it's still 150 bucks. So the Idea Foundry has Lightburn installed on the laser computer. If we want to make this kind of culture accessible to everyone, we like encouraging Inkscape and then exporting to Lightburn. It's surprisingly smooth. So if you know Lightburn, if you have it, just do it in there. But it's surprisingly easy to import a scalable vector graphic, a .svg, from Inkscape into Lightburn with almost no problems. And we'll show that video shortly. So I'm going to...
And Alex, just a kind
please.
time check. We have 25 minutes remaining.
Thank you very much. Okay, and I am resaving that. There we go, example vector. I'm going to share my screen again here. Not sure why that's going. I may still have PowerPoint in presentation mode, which is, there we go. Okay, and let's see. All my windows here. So this is that example vector.svg we created. I'm going to double click on this, and it's probably going to open it in Chrome. And I'm just showing, actually, it does look a little funny. I'm not quite sure why this line isn't showing. When I import this into Lightburn, it read it beautifully. So I think this might be a Chrome issue. But what we're going to do now is show some of those. Bum, 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 bum. So here, this is our bank of lasers at the Foundry. This one in the back is the one that we use. It's called the Thunder. And then here's a picture of what the plywood looked like once we had cut through the pattern. You can see that as we cut on the plywood, the pieces that we cut have dropped through since they're no longer held by the material. And then when we remove what I call the matrix material or the mother material, the whole sheet of plywood, we can see that because it was properly cut through, all of those drop cuts, all of our parts have stayed on the laser bed. And then kind of comically, if I'm then to pick up these pieces, which are the sides of our shadowcast lantern box, the drop cuts still remain. The raven we cut out, the parts of our stencilized font come out too. And here's a picture of the sticker showing the thickness of the plywood, that it was 5.2 millimeters. So what I'm going to do now is go to our videos. And these are not really intended to be instructional. We have a separate class at the Idea Foundry about how to use the laser, all the settings in Lightburn, what power means, what speed means. This is not intended to be educational, but rather to demystify the process, just so that each person here on the Zoom call right now or watching this video in the future knows, okay, these are the, let's say, 8 or 10 steps to go through. There's no mystery, there's no missing step in between these. So here, I'm going to turn my own voice off on this video. Oh, it looks like it is muted. So what we're doing is putting the flash drive in the computer. You can see the Thunder laser is right here. And then the Lightburn icon is right on the desktop. And then opened up Lightburn and then just file, open, and browse to the flash drive. This was a slightly different file than the one that I just showed you. You can see that the font, maybe you can't, but the font for the letters boo are not stencilized. But you can actually do that in Lightburn. And I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and show that we're clicking on the text icon and moving the icon to, or the text to another side of the box. And then we'd also added the stencilized fonts to this computer there. So you can see we're doing all that. We also added the words trick or treat. And then I'm going to pause the video here for a second. What's kind of fun, there's a window down here on Lightburn, and there's a play button. So when we loaded the vector in, Lightburn kind of arbitrarily assigns different colors to these vectors. So there's one color for the outer lines of the box, and another color for all the font and for the images. What we did is we just specified the same power and speed that the laser will cut, and we have settings listed at the computer that tell you if you're cutting through 1/8" or 0.2" plywood, you should use something like 20 millimeters per second at 50% power. So you don't have to guess too much. And then you just hit play on the Lightburn button here, and we're going to show what happens when we do that. Clearly, we've already cut through these parts here, but you can see the laser is now cutting through the plywood. It cut our little raven. It's cutting the letters B-O-O. And now you can see really what's happening if you don't stencilize those letters. If there's nothing holding the center of those letters to the matrix material, they all drop out. And now you can see it's cutting the outside edge of those box faces. And this is really fun. It's really quick. It's also, it smells a little campfire-y, so another reason to use the laser during fall. And then I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. You can see it's cutting all those parts. And it took maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes to cut all that. And then we lift the door. We can use a keypad joystick to move the laser out of the way and then to pick up our parts. And just as an example, I'm going to show, I took a photo of the laser settings. And here, yeah, we used 20 millimeters per second for the speed, 60% for the power. And that was fine for cutting out this nearly 1/8" Luan, which is a type of plywood. And then we'll show, it was a little awkward to assemble just one person, and I'll explain why. So sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of masking tape to take the piece, all the pieces, put them together puzzle style, have some masking tape to hold it together, and then either hot glue it or Elmer's glue or what have you. And then here's a picture of the box assembled. And then we just put a little tea light in there. And I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. Oh, I'm going to show the last bit where John and I were assembling it yesterday. And I think that's this one right here. There's a small point when I originally made this file. I think I made it for a 1/4" thick plywood. And then I bought the plywood and it was 1/8". So when we were assembling it, it was actually not quite, the tabs weren't quite the right size for the material, which is why it didn't really beautifully snap together. So I was glad for John to lend his hands holding it together while we masking taped it. Today, I did recut it with the exact right thickness. In MakerCrate, told it what the thickness was. And that part snapped together perfectly, put it together just one person. So that's the process. And you can see a little flickering of the tea light in there. So I'm going to hit stop share here. And yeah, show that when you actually do get the dimension right in MakerCase and then cut it, it fit together very nicely. That's about it. I know it was a lot, but if we go back over, there's the website MakerCrate for designing the file for the box. There's the software Inkscape, where we can either design our own shapes, trace our own shapes, or write our own text. Then there's how we save that to the flash drive, bring it to the computer downstairs by the laser, import into Lightburn, set those few settings for the power and speed on the laser, hit play, and then take the parts off the laser bed and puzzle piece assemble it into your own custom part. Having said all of that,
Good
glad to
stuff,
have the
Alex.
kind of back and forth. Yes, please.
A quick question for you. One, if this is interesting to others, how might they get involved and get their hands on the laser? What's that process like? And then how do we learn about the next online Zoom for this type of format?
Yeah, thanks for the questions. So for folks who don't know, anybody can take a class at the Idea Foundry. So go to ideafoundry.com, and I may as well do this as well. And then click on our classes. And then I think the laser class is under beginner classes, might be under tool tech. I'm going to click show all venues. So we'll see all of the kinds of classes we offer. And here's the Thunder laser class. So you can find this and then click on it, say book now, and then register for it. So anyone can take a class. Once you have taken a few classes to prove that you know how to use some of the tools, that you're a community-centric person, you can apply for membership at the Idea Foundry. Membership in the workshop is $55 a month. That gets you 24/7 access and permission to use any of the tools that you've been trained on. And then once you use a tool, there's a little clipboard next to it. Just put your name, the date, the time, and we charge you a few bucks an hour for the tools. I think the laser is it $35 an hour? But if you use it for 15 minutes, that's about $8. And then if you want us to walk you through the whole process, next Thursday, September 28th, from 6:30 to 8 p.m., we will be hosting people to make their own laser cut shadowcast lantern like we just went over today. So that's next Thursday, September 28th, and you can also find that class on the website. Incidentally, for people on the call now, this isn't terribly evergreen. We'll also be having a happy hour that same evening. So if you come at 5 o'clock, you can come to our happy hour where we're doing a goofy thing called flavor tripping. We're trying different foods with the miracle pill that coats the sour receptors on your tongue. So if you eat a lemon, it tastes like an orange. If you drink apple cider vinegar, it tastes like apple pie. So we're all about experimenting and experiences at the Idea Foundry. That's next Thursday. Any other questions?
I think that's good for today, Alex. Great job.
Hey, I appreciate everyone. And as always, email us at info@ideafoundry.com if you're curious about classes, membership. If you're intimidated by any of the tools or techniques, we most likely have someone who can walk you through the process if there isn't already a class. If people have custom ideas, custom projects, let us know. Hope to see everybody around the shop. And this particular Zoom class is fourth Friday of each month. Follow us on social, on Facebook at Idea Foundry for more information. Thanks all.